Welcome to My Life. Author Colette Taube Dywasuk is with us today. Colette was born in Detroit, lived in the metropolitan area all of her life. She has an MBA from the University of Michigan. She's been involved in the advertising business, marketing, communications, and in local government as well. She was treasurer of the Orion Township Library Board, and she was Orion Township supervisor from 1996 to 2000. Colette has also been involved with 2 nonfiction books on adoption. She has most recently written a memoir called The Sixth of 12. It's about being raised in a Catholic family with 12 kids during the 1940s and 1950s. Also inspiring her to write this was a near-death experience in childbirth, as well as the death of one of her 5 children. Colette actually has lost 2 children in her lifetime. She currently lives with her husband of over 50 years in Shelby Township, and we are honored to have her on our program.
Oh,
thank you for coming, Colette. You've got quite a history there.
Oh, thank you.
This book was just released in January of this year, I believe, wasn't
Actually,
it?
April.
April
Yeah.
of this year.
Yeah, it was. Actually, April.
So what was the magic spark that inspired you to write this book?
It was not actually a spark. It was more like a nag, I think. It was. In hindsight, I think it was probably my mother bugging me because it seemed like I couldn't let it go. It was like something I carried on my shoulders over the years. And of course, my sisters and brothers helped because they kept saying, "When are you going to finish that book?" And so that's really what kept me at it. But it was a very difficult and long journey.
So it actually started quite some time ago.
Yes, when I was Orion Township supervisor, I decided not to run again because I wanted to write this book. And so actually it took me 15 years to really complete it. But it wasn't, of course, writing every day. I mean, the way I wrote it was like vignettes. I wrote about growing up and growing up in a large family. And it took really a lot of meditation and concentration to bring back memories. You know, you'll have a flicker of something that you remember growing up, and you know, you really have to concentrate on it to bring back all of the memories, all of the parts of it. So
well, I know every once in a while my wife asks me, do I remember this or do I remember that about bringing up our kids, you know, and I'll have to stop and think, well, kind of.
Exactly.
I can't imagine you with 12 kids altogether.
Yeah.
Trying to sort all this stuff out in your mind and actually put it on paper.
Yeah.
In an intelligent way.
And it was difficult. And then there's things, you know, like, for example, I remember the streetcars on Van Dyke. And what year was that? You know, I would have to go and research to find out like what years the streetcars actually ran along Van Dyke. And I can remember like the Thanksgiving parades in Detroit my dad would take us to, and you know, like what were some of the characters? All right, I remember this or I remember that. Or the year we first got a television set, which turned out to be 1952, and what shows were on. I mean, I can remember like Howdy Doody or, you know, but I wanted to make sure what I was.
Now try and explain all that to your grandkids, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you know, so it did take a lot of research, and then so I would write like what I call vignettes about growing up, and another example is like we had this car called a Terraplane. It was a Hudson Terraplane, and you know, to verify that they were made in 1937, you know, I had to check it out, but my dad loved that car. But can you imagine 12 people fitting into one car? And we did it. I mean, we would go on, every Sunday we'd go on family rides, and actually people would point at us and try to count how many were in the car.
Well, everybody didn't have to wear a seatbelt back then.
No.
The crazy things we did.
Oh yeah, and we had like certain spots in the car that we would sit. But you know, those are memories that I have, and I wanted to make sure they were genuine and that I was remembering them correctly. So, you know, I did take a lot of research too. And then my youngest brother, Davy, lived near my mom, and so she would tell him a lot of the stories, so I could like verify some of the stories with him.
Well, he was the youngest one, so
He was the youngest.
he remembers more, probably.
One of my brothers says he remembers before he was born, but I don't think I don't think that's true.
A unique skill.
That's right.
All right, well, I'm going to test your memory, okay?
Okay.
Let's go back to, where exactly were you born? You were born in Detroit, right?
I was
Whereabouts?
born in Detroit at home. All of my mother's children were born at home, except my youngest brother. So I lived near 6 Mile in Van Dyke, or we call it 6 Mile, McNichols, on Mount Olivet, and so that, you know, I was born actually in the house. I was the first one born in that house.
So you're an East Sider.
Yes, all my
Okay.
life. I mean, all my life till I moved.
Did you know your
Detroit.
grandparents?
My mother's parents lived down the street. We called them Ma and Pa. And my dad's parents lived on the east side. I can't offhand think of the street that they lived on.
But you were
Joseph
lucky.
Campo.
Joseph Campo, but you were lucky enough to
Have-
know both sets of your grandparents.
Yes.
What about great-grandparents? Did you know any of them?
No, didn't know any of the great-grandparents.
Did all of your grandparents, were they all born in this country?
No, only one of them was. My dad's mother was born in Detroit. My mother's parents both came over. Well, my grandfather was born in Austria. He's Polish descent, but it was, you know, borders changed.
Poland
a
by
lot
way of
there.
Austria.
Yeah, exactly. And they both came over when they were about 5, not knowing each other's family, but they both came over when they were about 5. And my dad's father came over, and he was about the same age. He's from Germany.
Did they? This might seem like a dumb question, but did they come over with their parents, or did their parents come over first to establish themselves and then go back after them?
No, they came over with their parents. The interesting thing about it to me is neither, like my mother's parents, never spoke with an accent and didn't even speak Polish or another language. And my dad's parents, the same. Though my grandmother that was born in Detroit seemed more from the old country than the grandparents that actually came over from the old country. But we had a lot of ethnic foods, and my mom and dad, it was funny, they used to try to speak Polish. So we'd be at the supper table, and they'd be trying to not know, for us not to know what they were saying. But they used so many English words because they didn't know the Polish words for them that we knew exactly what the conversation would be about.
I want to pick up on that in just a moment. We have to take a brief pause, but we'll be right back. Back with author Colette Taube Dywasuk, and we were just talking about some of your family activities with your grandparents from the old country.
Yeah.
If you'd like to continue on that note, we'd like to hear.
All right, well, let's see. My mother's parents lived down the street from us, about a half block down the street.
And of course, you never visited them, right?
Oh, I think they had more visits than they ever even needed.
I got to ask you this, because I've been through this. Did your mom get mad at you when you stopped over there because you went over there too much? Or
My mother or my grandmother?
Well, you went. No, I'm sure your grandmother welcomed you.
Well, I think my grandparents got kind of tired.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And you know, as a kid, you do things like, one of the things when I was growing up, I went to a Catholic grade school, and I wanted to be a teacher, so I thought you had to be a nun to be a teacher. I didn't know, that there were teachers that were just secular, and so I used to dress up like a nun. And one of the things that I did, because they wore rosaries like from their belt, and one of the things that I did was borrow my grandmother's rosary without asking, and it turned out to be like a relic and really valuable, and I lost some beads. So she didn't always welcome that kind of familiarity. And when I knew my grandmother, she had rheumatoid arthritis, so she was in a lot of pain. But we were close to them, but probably, like I say, not spend a whole lot of time there.
Well, with the nationality, you probably had some really good Sunday dinners, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of your most memorable ones?
Well, Christmas time was the most memorable, and I can remember we would have ethnic foods, and I can remember, the Polish name for it is Chinina, that I can remember my mom one year giving me a bowl of Chinina to tell me that it was good, I should try it. And it was brown, and I said I didn't want to eat it because it was dirty. And it turned out that Chinina is made from duck's blood. So once I found out that, I never did taste it. But on Sundays, well, we were actually we never thought of ourselves as poor growing up, but obviously with that large of a family, money was tight. So during the week we'd have things like soups and, but on Sundays we always had like a veal roast and a pork roast. That was our big meal of the week. And then like I say, for special holidays, kielbasa. My grandfather actually made kielbasa and smoked it.
Did he?
Yeah. And, cabbage rolls and, all the Polish and German type
What did
foods.
your father do for a living?
He worked in a factory. He was an inspector in a heat treat plant. My dad was a really hard worker. He'd get up like at 4:30 in the morning, go to work before anybody was even up. And he worked there for 24 and a half years, and then he got sick, and he had multiple sclerosis. And they let him go before he got his retirement.
That was hard.
Very hard.
Was he born and raised in Detroit as well?
Yes, he was.
From that same part of the city? Or?
Yes, and actually he started working when he finished 8th grade, and then his family insisted that he go to work in the plant, and so he was a factory worker.
What did your grandfathers do?
My grandfather also, his dad worked in the plant also. My mother's father was an entrepreneur until the Depression. He had shoe stores, hardware stores, candy stores, but then he lost everything in the Depression. And then he worked as a guard in a bank downtown until he retired.
How old was your father when he passed away?
He passed away in 1967. I think he was in his 50s. I can't remember. Maybe he was 62.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly right now the age.
This might be a stupid question, but did your mother ever work outside the home?
My mother, not from the time they were married, she didn't until my dad got sick, and she had been a secretary, and she had knew shorthand and typing, so she tried to go back to work for Kelly Services, temporary work, but my dad was sick, my youngest brother was still home, and my oldest sister was handicapped, and they were home. So, and my other sisters and brothers were still in school, so it didn't work out because there was always family emergencies.
What was your favorite family activity that you can remember from your preschool days?
My family activity was every Sunday we'd take a ride. My dad was very adventurous, and he would find places to go. Like we would mostly go to old schoolhouses where we would have picnics and we would play games, and they had the outhouse and the outside well, so we would have like our own picnic grounds. And then in the summer he would take us anywhere swimming, from Ipperwash Beach to Brighton to just anywhere there, somewhere always different. He would just set out and we would go someplace.
Were your grandparents with you a lot on some of these adventures?
No, it was just our immediate family.
But I would assume a lot of the holiday stuff was with
Well,
the grandparents.
my grandparents, my mom's parents had a cottage on Utica Road on the Clinton River. And so we would go there and spend a lot of time with my grandparents there. And a lot of family, baseball games and
Sure.
get-togethers.
Okay, so you told me that you were schooled by the nuns.
Yes.
What grade school did you go to?
Holy Name Grade School. Holy Name was on Van Dyke near 6 Mile, and it's not any longer operating. And then I went to Dominican High School, Catholic all-girls high school, for high school.
Just out of curiosity, what order of nuns taught
Dominican,
you?
Adrian Dominican.
Dominican Sisters of Adrian.
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good. So, being a Catholic, I would assume you went to church every Sunday?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And you had your first communion and your confirmation?
Yes, yes.
And all of that.
Yep.
Were you one of those students that was on the straight and narrow through grade school, or were you one of those students that had to be corrected every now and then?
My parents truly believed in the nuns the way they taught. And to them, learning was important, not marks. It was like, my dad was very much into learning. He read the Book of Knowledge every single night. He wanted to have gone, through school, but he couldn't because his parents insisted he not. He hoped all of his kids could go to college. So they pushed us to learn, but never made a big thing about grades. As long as you got C's, you were safe. And for myself, I could have tried a lot harder in school. I was a good girl, but all right, we're having a biology test tomorrow, I better study. But I wasn't. But one year, when I was in 6th grade, I had a nun.
Can I pause you there? Because we have to take a break right now, but I want to pick up on that story. It'd be a good place to start. We'll be right back with Colette. Don't go away.
There's a lot of history to Oxford. Hidden around every corner, deep in every crack, and sometimes right in front of you, waiting to be discovered. If you just dig a little, you'll find the great history of our beautiful town. Welcome to Historic Oxford.
Hello, I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny. Together we want to invite you to our weekly show, Minutes by Minute.
Minutes by Minute is a show where we talk about what's going on with your local Oxford-Addison commissions and councils and other local political groups, passing out legislation and ordinances that affect you. We believe that there is humor in politics and government, and you just have to look for it.
And usually we find it. For example, did you know that a local village has an ordinance that says if you have an acre of land, you're allowed up to 25 chickens, but no rooster?
That could be bad news for the chickens and bad news for the rooster.
Check out our weekly Minutes by Minutes, Monday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m.
There is a warning, Minutes by Minute could be contagious.
We're pleased to be here with Colette Taube Dywasuk. And Colette was just refreshing our memory, or her memory too, on her activities in grade school. And you had a particular teacher you were starting to tell us about.
Yes, Sister Grace Imelda in 6th grade. When I got into her classroom, now my sisters and brothers, all preceded me, down the line in grade school. My brother, just older than me, was a class clown. I mean, and Sister Grace Imelda, when she saw my name on the list, she was a little bit taken back. And I asked my brother about it, and he says, well, because I used to do stuff to tease her, I'd hide her papers on the desk and do whatever. And you have to understand, in those days, we had 50 children in our Catholic grade schools. But anyhow, Sister Grace Imelda approached me one day, and every year during the summer, she had this fern that she loved, and it was huge, and she would let one of the students take the fern home for the summer when the nuns weren't at the convent. And so I wasn't really interested in it that much, but I felt like the other girls in the class didn't think I was any competition. So Sister Grace Imelda said, I'll make you a deal. She said, if you get on the honor roll and get all A's, and I know you can do it, I'll let you take my fern home for the summer. So that year I really applied myself, and I won the spelling bee, and I always did good in reading because I loved reading, but it was, the science and math that was a challenge. So I got to take the fern home. Unfortunately, that year we had a fire in the house and the fern got damaged. So when I went back to school the following fall and told Sister, and she said, that fern isn't the important thing. She says, you'll remember for the rest of your life what you can do if you put your mind to it.
Were your parents impressed with that?
I don't think so. I really don't think grades and those kind of achievements were important to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, they never made a big thing about grades or anything. It was mostly like, as long as you're learning, that was the important thing.
You said a while ago that one of your goals back then was to become a teacher.
Yes.
So you dressed up like the nuns and that sort of thing. Did you practice on your siblings, or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the advantage of being right in the middle and having younger sisters and brothers. I practiced teaching. We practiced the Mass. We would pretend we were, had the Mass. And another time I wanted to be a nurse. I read the series Cherry Ames Student Nurse, and I wanted to be a nurse. And so for Christmas I got a nurse kit, and I would practice. They would be my patients. But that only lasts, as long as you have something to reward them with. And in the nurse's kit there were candy pills, so while the candy pills lasted, I had patience, but after that I didn't.
Would you say that fern incident was probably the happiest memory you have of grade school?
Yes. I think because Sister had faith in me, and I think that was. Yes, that was. I had an incident in high school. It didn't work out as well with a nun. When I was a senior in high school, we had to write a term paper. And I told you my dad had multiple sclerosis. And at the time, it was not a very well-known disease. So for my term paper, I decided I would write about multiple sclerosis. And I really did a lot of research and really worked hard on it. And when I got the paper, when I got my grade, she had given me an F on it. And so and this teacher was very intimidating. So I went to her and I said, why did I get an F? And she said, you think I am so stupid that I would believe that you wrote that? She said, not only if you, she says, and not only am I going to give you an F on that, you'll fail this class, but if you don't stop talking about it or doing something about it, you won't even graduate. And fortunately, I did not need that credit to graduate, but it made me realize I must be a pretty good writer.
Did the truth ever come to light to that? teacher?
I never, at the time, my mom had her hands full with my dad, and I never even talked to my parents about that. But years later, there was a reunion at Dominican High School, and there were nuns there, and I was able to talk to the nuns and tell them that subsequently I had published 2 books, and that term paper was mine, and they were going to go back and tell her. That was the resolution for me.
Did you ever hear from her?
No.
No, you didn't.
Really.
How old were you when your father discovered his disease?
I was 10. Yeah, it was, the picture on the book was 1951, and that was when he first found out that he was having problems. And it was like staggering, and, people would ask, is your dad a drinker? Because he was having the health issues.
What do you remember about how that was revealed to your family?
We were at dinner, and my parents said that my dad had this disease, but as a kid, it's just like, oh, he's not going to die, so it must not be that bad. The first change I noticed was my dad always drove, and he took my mom out to teach her how to drive. But as a kid, we would be at a schoolhouse, and they would go off, where she was learning how to drive, and when they'd come back, all of us would hide and pretend we were afraid she was going to hit us, So as a kid, the way you take it is not how you do,
but this had a lot of implications on your family. You had a family with 12 kids here, and he had a disease that affected his ability to earn a wage. And how was that all absorbed by you and your siblings?
You just kind of take it as that's the way life is. It's not, I went to work when I was 14. To help support the family. I worked in a dime store, and all our money went home. And each of my sisters and brothers did that.
So you realized, there was a point where you realized that everybody had to kick in and help out.
Absolutely. And realize that, our parents had their hands full, so don't bother them with things that aren't real important. And then, my brother was only 2.5, my youngest brother, when my dad was diagnosed. So, so it was true, they did have their hands full.
Yeah. We're coming to the end of our first episode here with Colette Taube Dywasuk. We have a lot more ground to cover here. We're going to have a second episode with you, Colette, if you can have the time to stick around with us.
Oh, sure, I'd be
We'd sure
happy
love to do that. So please come back and join us for episode 2 with Colette Taube Dywasuk. Thanks for joining us.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website dogsaver.org and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.